Hello, everybody. It's Mrs. Pound, and I'm back with another section from Chapter 4.1 about water. And today we're going to talk about surface water. Our last video was groundwater, so we're going to move back to the surface. So, our objectives today are to summarize how a stream forms. So, stream formation. Streams begin as runoff that travels down a hill or mountain. The water erodes the soil to form a gully. And eventually, the flowing water widens and deepens the gully into a valley with a permanent stream. And so you can kind of see that process going on here. And I know when I hike around this area, I do see a lot of this kind of activity where in the summer, there are areas where you can tell water runs through, but it's dried up because water only runs through there when there's runoff or when there's snow melt. Now, all of this water that runs off goes into a watershed. This is an area of land that drains into our particular river system. And the water always follows the flow of gravity. So, water always goes from a high to a low, and it follows the topography of the land. And so, all this land here, you see this stream or possibly a river going through there. All of the water from the surrounding area is draining into this, and that is its watershed. And some examples of watersheds, especially in this area, would be the Chautauqua Lake watershed, the Allegheny River watershed, and the Allegheny River watershed is part of the Ohio River watershed, and the Ohio River watershed is part of the Mississippi River watershed. So there are different levels for watersheds as well. So all of those streams that go into those larger streams or rivers are called tributaries. And around here, the Conewango Creek would be a tributary to the Allegheny River. And the Allegheny River is a tributary to the Ohio River. It joins that. And the Ohio River is a tributary of the Mississippi River. And you can see a tributary coming in here on this aerial view. Now, there are also what are called divides. This is a ridge or other elevated region that separates watersheds. In our area, you actually can find signs that say that you are entering the Chautauqua Lake watershed. And the biggest divide in our country is called the Great Divide or the Continental Divide. And that is along the Rocky Mountains, and that separates the water that flows into the Pacific Ocean from the water that flows into the Atlantic Ocean. And the Continental Divide is also part of the Great Divide because it actually goes down through South America. Now, hard water as the water is flowing over the land, sometimes it flows through materials like limestone type materials and it becomes hard. And hard water contains dissolved minerals such as calcium and magnesium. And you can see here, there has this is not snow or ice. This is actually a calcium deposit. This is basically limestone from hard water that is flowing over the rock. Now, a major problem is urbanization. This is a process by which much of the absorbent topsoil and vegetation area is replaced by impermeable surfaces. What happens here is when there is runoff after, say, a storm, a lot of that water, when it runs over the land, is actually absorbed by vegetation, by trees, by grasses, and also our wetlands are very important for holding water, but a lot of times those also are filled in by urbanization. And so you do not have those areas to absorb that runoff and prevent flooding. So what you have is you've replaced it with hard surfaces like these parking lots, and you end up with a lot of flooding in cities that will even the storm drainage cannot handle. And so a lot of times, I know in this area, you will hear in the spring of a lot of places in Buffalo, a lot of the streams and everything flooding. And it's due to the urbanization in those areas because it simply cannot handle all of the runoff, all of the snow melt that is going on. So, green areas and our wetlands are very important. Also, what will happen is there tends to be a lot of pollution in these areas, gas spills, oil leaks, and things, and that also gets into our streams from parking lots. So, our main objective was to summarize how a stream forms. So, 5 questions, and I'll be back with more about water.